Okay, welcome to another Pain podcast, Painful Truths edition. And I'm the host today, Tim Beames. I'm the co-founder of Le Pub Scientifique, and I've got Bart Van Booken with me.
Hello, guys.
Today, Bart, hello, sorry. Should be some pleasantries in there, at least, shouldn't there?
Hello, I'm here.
For a change, we're sitting. It's so comfortable, isn't it? It's such a beautiful day outside in the UK, and I know in the Netherlands the same as well. So we're feeling pretty good about ourselves, aren't we? So today we were thinking about talking and considering misinformation, how we counter misinformation, how we might undo unhelpful messaging and things like that. So as pain clinicians, as specialist pain physios and pain educators, is something that we spend quite a lot of time considering, I believe. There's and I want to share a sort of I don't know, just something that's very, very current. So a couple of days ago, I was listening to my patient and their experience, and I'm sharing this because I'm sure this will be similar for many clinicians as you're listening. Is that as the story unravelled, I heard more and more snippets of just such unhelpful bits of information. Now, whether it was the exact way that the clinicians had shared that with this person, or whether that's what they heard, it doesn't really matter to me. But they took back with them some really disappointing messages, and I won't be too specific about it, but they were related to the causes of pain, basically, and the way that the person was articulating the cause for pain was so far away from where we had been discussing things. And the effect that had is twofold. It had, as I was listening to it, I was feeling really disappointed, frustrated, annoyed, and I'm sure that's common for everybody. So, and it's what I do is I sort of do a checking in process in myself, and I notice that I'm getting a bit frustrated and what have you. And actually, I end up usually sharing that with someone and saying, I feel so frustrated that this is what you've been experiencing. And I'm really sorry about that. And then we find a way to work from there. And and then from my patient, their point of view was that they were then having a conversation with me, doubting themselves. We've done, I thought that this was it, but actually, maybe it isn't. Maybe I do need to go and get a scan or do this specific exercise. And they showed me this, and this variation of very specific targeted exercises, which if, at the right time and place would have been, or could have been really, really helpful. But yeah, and so that was just a very, very. I'm being a little bit vague with details, just trying to protect them. But is it something that you come across regularly as well, then, Bart?
Yeah, definitely. And I guess that's where the longer people seem to be in the pain for condition, I guess that the more you hear about stuff, and people seem to filter some of the bullshit. And that does seem to have a positive effect of people starting to sort of balancing what they hear and what they do get from it. Some people are very sensitive, especially when other people, friends, like saying, well, you should do this, you should do that. Have you thought about this? I think that at some point people go through like multiple disappointments. And my observation is that people are starting to bounce back and they're starting to be neglecting these things and are not really into getting more advice from whoever. So my feeling is that people are resistant to any kind of suggestion, also mine. So I'm very aware of that. People are fed up with these like causal these causal relationships. So this is causal, you should do this. And I guess that's where people has gone through. This doesn't happen when people just have their first onset, let's say first episode of low back pain. They're actually very interested in, oh, what's the problem? Oh, let's go for it. Let's fix it. So I think we should have to make sure we're talking about the right patient. Is it the patient who's just showing up with a first episode of low back pain, which can be terrifying, terrible? Or do we talk about people in a state that has been there for maybe 4 years already and have experienced multiple disappointments and have going through trying and taking advice on board and failing to get the result?
Yeah. I think Thanks for thanks for clarifying. And I probably should have said, so this person has been experiencing pain over many years. So it feels like it would be a miracle given the journey that they'd already had, that suddenly there'd been this missed target of a specific muscle that was at fault for everything that they'd experienced. So,
it also sounds quite ridiculous, isn't it? If you're there for like years and someone said, "Oh, actually, this is the fix. This is the problem. Why didn't anybody seen it?" And which is it's getting more unlikely the longer you're in pain. And people are not unsensitive to that. And I think, like you said, bringing that up, but I also do understand where it's come from, because some people will get maybe they will get an explanation for that pain. It's just very sophisticated and balanced, but you're also biased towards what you understand and what you hear. Your framework is just what you can take on board. And if the muscle thing is the only thing you really understand, that's probably the thing you hear. And all this balanced information about emotions and like lifestyle, immunology, hormones, like endocrine system is probably not gonna go down well, or people don't necessarily. It does, because they're not buying it, but it's not relevant at that stage. And it might become more relevant over time.
So I wonder whether I might summarize a little bit, because I feel like we're on the same page here. There's this the information that someone holds and then acts upon is just what it is. It's just their knowledge. It's the framework of knowledge that they've built up over time, that's come from a number of different places, number of different people, number of different experiences. And that has a specific relationship with the actions that they're then going to take. They're not wrong for having that information. It's just something that they've built up over time. It's just their knowledge. And it's only us that are saying that it's unhelpful. I think it's important not to put blame on someone that they've gone to see whatever therapist who has given this knowledge, and that it seems so compelling, so powerful, that it really is driving them to.
Yeah, isn't that
Sorry?
doesn't where the frustration comes from, where you feel like people are taking this on their own account and they're basically blaming themselves for making the wrong decision, doing too much, or not doing the right exercise, or blaming themselves for even, I should have looked after myself much more, and I'm in pain because of this. And even in psychology, I'm not.
Yeah. Because we've talked about this, haven't we?
Yeah, we did.
We talked about posture and the different messages around posture, and And I'm thinking about, when you say muscles, I'm immediately thinking about the core movement and the influence that that's had. I mean, there's some positive and there's some not so positive from that, aren't there? But it's just knowledge and information, isn't it? It's about how that then shifts and dictates the behaviors that you take. So then coming to what we were originally thinking about then, is that when you notice something that, for instance, makes that person doubt what they've done, or start feeling confused, or that they feel that to blame for the position that they've got themselves into, where would you typically start? What are you thinking about from that point?
That's a good question. I think people have probably construct their own idea about where this sits in terms of validation and truth, worthiness. So I guess I think it's just feeding in, it's just asking questions. So how do you feel about this? And how relevant is this to you? And how valid is this? You feel like, is this your story? And some people will already you can get I think you get a nice idea of how that sits with someone. So very much like how much do you believe of this? How much do you really understand or get this idea of the causality of your problem is because of this? And some people say, well, it's 50%. So, and I think that raises an opportunity to say, so what is the other 50? Or where is the doubt? Why don't you believe it's 100%? Because that's what the intentionally, in the first place, was being communicated. So I'm in pain because of my bulge disc. So what is the other 50%? But I think we should talk first about talking about the 50% they do have the causality claim on. Why it's important to them. Because if we're going to take that away, it's also breaking down the construct of your understanding of your body, and you leave it's the uncertainty that kicks in. And I'm not sure if you're in the position to basically take something away from somebody and then just let them go. I think we you have to be aware there's a responsibility to replace this knowledge. And I also feel like you can't do that in a 20-minute session, or even not in a 45 session. So you have to be very careful. So I feel like I'd rather give people a little bit of a challenge and just asking, not giving information until people are coming back with information, asking for, well, I don't believe this anymore, so can you give me an alternative? But this is quite important, because I think you have to be aware that you take something away. You're stealing the idea. It's maybe not. It's uncertainty that you create. And I think uncertainty is one of those things in therapy that is probably part of the problem. People don't cope well with uncertainty. You might even too. I might not be doing well in uncertainty. And I also feel like my suggestion or my causality. So I think your pain is because of this. So many reasons, but that's also a bold claim, right? Because we can't be for 100% sure. It's like a hypothesis, and I'm not sure if that's if we are in the place to say basically, so this is your problem and this is how you should deal with it. And I think that's a shared decision you have to make, and that may take a few sessions.
Yeah,
you reckon?
Yeah. I'm minded of obviously had a great chat with Mike Stewart a few episodes back about different types of thinkers, a convergent versus a divergent thinker, and how those convergent thinkers are looking for the right, wrong, black, white, yes, no, and you know that then if you create doubt for these people, that can be a real challenge. But it might be important to put some doubt there. where the divergent thinkers, perhaps you do need to create a little more clarity and be a bit more specific and targeted, and being able to recognize what that person, the type of thinker that they might be, will also assist you in the way that you approach them. But I want to bring out something that you said, because I feel like it's really powerful, is you have a responsibility to replace this knowledge. So if you're a clinician and you take away something that someone believes and perhaps that they built over many, many, many years, consider what they're left with. And if they're not left with very much, then that's a precarious position to be in. So I really like your suggestion there, is to have in mind, if you are hearing things that don't sound great, that perhaps that don't look like they're helpful for that person in that time, consider how you're going to replace it. So don't just take it, whip it away.
It is like saying this is bullshit.
Finding those alternatives to begin.
Yeah, saying it's bullshit is a very bold claim as well. Is not. I'm not sure if you're doing a great job there by calling out the bullshit. Sometimes it depends on the context, but you can say, well, actually, this is not true. I think it would be hard for people to get, because there's a lot of background that you need to. So because these questions and these claims are usually sort of summarizing lots of information, and therefore it's getting really tricky to replace that in a certain amount of time, or even in limited amount of time. That's why I feel like you can sort of start the process by experiments and asking people how they feel about it. And even this percentage question could be a way of doing that, right? So you could get a nice chance. So how do you feel about this right now? Well, actually, there's a bit more. There's some merit in this. Let's slowly move and experiment with that. It could be also an invitation rather than saying it's wrong, because I do feel like when the knowledge is wrong, you also have to embody that. It has to, because it goes with the feeling. And if you want to prevent people to be in a uncertain place, if you know you're doing it, you also have to tell them how to manage that, and you have to ask back, because otherwise it will be just standard information that caused uncertainty, and people will move back to let's say the direct claim that makes sense to them and is probably the less uncertain.
Yeah. And you're sort of bringing up a point about learning here, aren't you? That you could throw a bit of information back, but how's it going to fall? How's it going to sit? Is it going to have any effect on the actions that person takes? Oh man, I'm just now as we're talking, I'm just revisiting all the things that have made me feel uncomfortable this week that I've been listening to, and I wonder whether it's it's worth just thinking about how you are in that moment, because there are times when you build a relationship with someone and you feel quite familiar, you have a nice rapport, a nice relationship, and it's difficult to sort of guard in a way, keep composure if you want with someone. And I had a lovely message back from another patient I'm treating, and she said, I could feel your eyes roll when I started talking about this. And then I started thinking, were my eyes rolling? was I looking that, that miffed by what I was hearing back about what she'd been told? And it could have been. And I'm wondering, is that so bad sometimes? No. I think that really depends on that individual relationship that you're building with people, but it can be difficult, can't it? It can be really difficult when the way that someone is met and the information that they hear is so at odds with what you might believe and the direction that you might be working.
Yeah, and I don't think you should be sort of challenge that beliefs too fast and being too rigid. And you sometimes just have to listen first. I think listening doesn't invalidate, even if you're not, even your rolling eyes sort of does say something, right? Because it really, like, oh my God. And even saying, oh, I'm very sorry for you that you've heard this is also that's also a very strong statement, because you're saying, oh, this is definitely wrong. And there is this notion and understanding of constructivism, which I like, is David Butler has introduced years ago in how education has been, and how we learn, right? So we have to be aware that we're learning people stuff in with existing knowledge. They do have their biases, and they might have been confirmed in their bias over and over and over. Every time when I do this, it starts hurting. Every time. And sometimes, and I think that's where it does. I had a client this week actually that was saying, I've done too much. I just have to manage my activities. I did too much gardening. And she basically labeled or named all the things she liked. And she basically, I should do this less. I should do this less, because it hurt afterwards. So my question was to her back, well, I hear you basically saying everything you like, you should do less. And I'm a bit worried about that, because I'm not sure if that's going to be the solution. So can you please go back and think about how many times you did the gardening and it didn't give that terrifying, terrible response? And she started thinking, and then I got her. And she said, well, actually, most of the time it went down well. So, and then she started to realize that she was basically generalizing. And we talk about generalization and how this is going to affect the plan from now on. So are you going to reduce your gardening? Well, in the end of the day, we decided not to reduce gardening, but to think, or at least trying to understand what's of an effect in her situation, why it might have happened this time, and not particularly because of the gardening. And she was pretty relieved about that. So, and we also decided that she needed to cope with the situation. She had to manage her pain at that stage, because it was terrifying and terrible at that moment. So it wasn't saying you don't have to pay any attention, you should just go on. No, it's like finding the balance. It's the pacing that needs some time and understanding. But I just wanted to prevent that this piece of information was sitting there and making her life probably less fun, because she was the one thing she did like the most. Gardening was basically part of the pain problem. So I think that was an example of how we challenge that. Sometimes you just have to get back to the facts. Is it really generalizing ideas or black and white thinking? So these are things that construct our thoughts, right? So this is really interesting when you go into, if you dive in this stuff of learning and how we hold information, why things are sticky sometimes, and what we do if we're stressed, if we're not feeling well, we're more likely to generalize, to be black and white thinking. It's always like that. It's not always like that. It's not always. It happened, but it's not always. So sometimes you have to challenge people on their thinking, because it may not be correct. But it's mainly driven by emotional responses. And that's where I feel like you have to make sure that people are getting the most vital information. They have to be in a good place. They have to sit with you comfortably. If they're stressed out, don't feel well, it's very unlikely that even your information is as valid and great and looking as good as it can ever be. It's not going to go down well. Sorry, but that's the checking in, right? Are you ready to receive being challenged? I think that's something we have to sometimes just have to work on, this situation where people are trusting you. not because they want to believe you, but because they just trust you and you're looking after them. I think that's what this person with the rolling eyes you just mentioned to me. That so all right, I saw that happening. I felt it, and she really saw that.
You
She
felt
felt it.
it,
So
yeah.
that makes it. Yeah, she felt that was important to her. So you got back to that, and
Yeah.
that's a great observation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. She's awesome, actually. I'm thinking that because I use this quite a lot with people, but the negativity bias, and I think I got this from Rick Hansen. As humans, we have Velcro for bad and Teflon for good experiences, and what you've given us is an example of someone who had awesome Velcro. The Velcro was doing its job and the Teflon was doing its job, and perhaps we need a little bit of Velcro on that Teflon side, on the good side, and notice that there is a balance. Yeah, and what we aim to do with our discussions here is we aren't trying to be black and white thinkers. We're quite divergent, aren't we? And there's a time and a place, and it's about figuring out what that time and place is. So I love the fact that you brought in how we learn, and also that we might be that might change at different points in time as well, and we might be more black and white thinkers if we're in a really challenging situation. That pain definitely can be, can't it? It can be a massive stressor in itself. So give people a little bit of slack and some support is what I'm hearing as well from you. And perhaps to begin with, for some people, you need to be a little slower, a little more compassionate, offer up some alternatives whilst creating some support as well for them. So unfortunately, we're running out of time. But today's Painful Truth edition was thinking about misinformation and countering misinformation and undoing unhelpful messages. And we've given a sort of a little flavor, and what I'm hearing, Bart, you can sort of help summarize this, but what I'm hearing is that that the information that someone receives, it has a influence on the behaviors that they take, the actions that they take, and they're weighing up that information relative to the knowledge and understanding and the experience that they've had in their lives. Who are we to suddenly start saying that's all wrong? So consider before you start countering misinformation, if you feel like it's not helpful information, consider how you're going to replace that knowledge that they currently have, and where they got that knowledge from as well. And you've given some examples of asking someone to come up with alternatives, or alternative maybe explanations, alternative experiences, like your gardening example. So that someone can recognize that actually persistent pain in particular was the example that we were sort of running with, wasn't it? But persistent pain in particular, we don't have all the answers, actually. To be 100% certain, I feel that that's a bit foolish. I feel like that's, I think that's a quite bold.
It is
and
bold.
and I want to I would retain an element of uncertainty regardless, because I just don't know 100%.
Yeah. Well,
Anything
also
that
to
you
sort
want
of
to
yeah.
summarize there?
I guess
Yeah.
that I think you summed up really well there, and I don't think this is the place where you have to be exactly right, but it's not, let's say you're uncertain as a therapist about what you're doing and what you're talking about. It's about, in my view, it will be showing that you are comfortable with this type of uncertainty and how you deal with it. Because it's not about, because we can have like a sort of a claim that actually you are safe. You're not gonna this you will be resilient, or you will be able to motivate yourself. This is, you're in, maybe you might be in like a very bad place right now, but it's not. You'll be all right in a while, and we're going to be there for you. So it's not about we don't know what's happening exactly. It may be this, maybe that, because that's uncertainty. That's people not seeking for a healthcare professional to hear an uncomfortable person. You have to be comfortable, and you can show it. Like, actually, we don't know, and that's all right. Or what we do know is this. Yeah. So I think that's the process where you can sort of finding your way. And if you feel uncomfortable with doing that, I think you should join Le Pub, because that's the process we've gone through every time, being more comfortable with what we know. And is it just knowledge you need to understand yourself, or is it more finding these ways of how to manage these clinical challenges? And I think having people throwing out some messaging that comes straight from the social media that frustrates you, just have to figure out, how do I discuss it in a way that's going to be helpful for the therapeutic process? Well, I think that sums it up in a way.
Lovely.
Yeah.
And we're on our journey, and we wanted to share a bit of our journey as well. So although we've been clinicians for many, many years, I feel, and I know that you do as well, we feel like we're constantly growing, and Le Pub has been a big part of that for me. If you like what you've been hearing here, then, well, thanks for making it to the end of this session and this episode. Give us a like, tell everybody about it. We want to get it out there. We want people to know. We want to help others, not just people in pain, but the people working with those in pain as well. So come and visit us at lepubscientifique.com. Follow on the socials. And we will see you at the next one.
Thank you guys for listening.
Thanks very much.
Ciao.